They came here because they felt safe. They came here because we have a lot to offer. And if they want to come back and put down roots here, I'm sure I could find something for Harry to do. And the film industry is booming in British Columbia, so I'm sure Meghan could get on with one of the great, maybe Riverdale, who knows? She'd be good.
It looks like Prince Harry and his wife Meghan will indeed be living in Canada part-time. That was part of an announcement from the Queen today after senior royals met at her estate, one of her estates. In a statement released earlier, the Queen said, "My family and I are entirely supportive of Harry and Meghan's desire to create a new life as a young family. Although we would have preferred them to remain full-time working members of the royal family," she goes on to say, "we respect and understand their wish to live a more independent life as a family while remaining a valued part of my family. It has therefore been agreed that there will be a period of transition in which the Sussexes will spend time in Canada and the UK. These are complex matters for my family to resolve, and there is some more work to be done." So what could this new arrangement mean for Canada? Could Canadian taxpayers be on the hook for royal security and housing? Mel Capp is a former Canadian High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, and also a former clerk of the Privy Council. He joins us now from Toronto. Hi, Mr. Capp. Great to see you again. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Pleasure, Vashi.
The Queen released a statement today saying, kind of confirming that there will be a transition period where Prince Harry and Meghan will spend time in Canada and the UK. Does any of this surprise you? What's your reaction to it?
Surprise, I don't know. I can't be surprised by the royals anymore. I think it is interesting, though. I mean, the Queen has gone through challenges to the family extensively over her whole life. Remember, her uncle abdicated, and she saw her father, who really never thought he would ascend to the throne, become king. And all of these challenges, including the divorces that her children went through, and the challenge of when Princess Diana died. I mean, those are all things that she had to deal with as a grandmother, as a mother, as a niece, as a daughter, as a family. And she's acting both as a granny, as Harry would call her, and as the Queen.
Based on your time in the UK, I mean, what we've read a lot of so far is that both Prince Harry and Meghan seem to be overwhelmed. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's a ton of coverage of their every move, as well as particular focus on Meghan. What is the environment, the media environment there, or the public consumption of this kind of stuff, based on your experience?
Insatiable. The public in the United Kingdom is absolutely smitten and overwhelmed themselves by the royals. So they look for every opportunity. And the paparazzi, remember, I mean, when Diana was unfortunately died in Paris, it was a result of an incident with the paparazzi. And, I had seen in very relaxed and leisure time the Prince of Wales and his boys playing polo. And just reams of photographers all over the place just to get a photo, hoping, I'm sure, that they wanted them to fall off their ponies. But it is a brutal contact sport in the United Kingdom.
So we have seen a number throughout the day on the network and elsewhere. I've seen a number of people who, primarily reporters who are based there, talk about some of the backlash and some of the anger that a number of Britons are feeling towards these two for wanting to not spend their time as a royal. Does that make sense to you?
You mean they resent them wanting to have a life?
That's pretty much it.
No,
yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me, but neither do I think they're wrong. You remember what the Queen said when she ascended to the throne, when her father passed, George VI. She said that throughout her life, it would be her duty to serve. And so, yes, she's a granny, but also she's the Queen. Yes, he is Harry, but he's also the Duke of Sussex. So it's very difficult to balance these kinds of conflicting requirements of life. And so he had grown up as Prince Harry. She became instantaneously the Duchess of Sussex. Very, very difficult to accommodate to that.
When we're talking about Canada and the two of them possibly residing here for a big chunk of time, what is your understanding of the role of the Canadian government? Will we be paying for security? What I know we don't know the for sure's right now, but just based on your experience, again, what would you think might happen?
So what typically happens is, certainly for official business, when the royals are in Canada, it is the government of Canada who deals with them and covers their security costs. That is for official business. For unofficial business, it's much more ambiguous. So the Metropolitan Police in London have the Royal Security Service, and they look after the royals everywhere. But remember, we had Andrew going to school here at Lakeview for 4 years. So the RCM police are very accustomed to dealing with this personal life of royals in Canada. And so, yes, we are not going to let something happen to the sixth in line to the throne. He's sixth in line to become the King of Canada. We're not going to let something happen to him. Is this a big security cost? I don't really think so.
I think it's reportedly around $1.7 million annually. I guess at least some of what we're hearing from viewers is a bit of resentment to the idea, and it depends who the viewer is, I'll say that, but a bit of resentment to the idea that because of a decision they're making, not one that is an official visit or something like that, because of a decision they're making, our taxpayers, people in our country will be on the hook for that. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say $1.7 million is not a huge cost in the grand scheme of things. Put this in context. We provide that kind of protection for people who are internationally protected persons visiting Canada all the time, whether it's the Aga Khan or other royals from other countries, or just people living here who are internationally protected persons. Barack Obama is coming to Toronto to speak in a couple of weeks. The RCM police are not going to let anything happen to him. They will provide protection. He's an internationally protected person.
Does it surprise you that they'd choose, before I let you go, that they choose Canada as a place they want to spend a bulk of their time?
Not in the least. Meghan Markle has been, the Duchess of Sussex, has been very clear that so long as Donald Trump is president of the United States, she wants to be able to visit her family in the United States, but she will not move back to the United States. Therefore, Canada is a very comfortable accommodation.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Cap. Pleasure to have you as always.
Pleasure, Bessie. Bye.
We obviously are always looking to make sure that as a member of the Commonwealth that we play a role. We have not had any discussions on that subject at this time.
We're back with the Power Panel, Melissa, Dan, Matthew, and JP. That was Finance Minister Bill Morneau, who was asked this morning about who is going to pay for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's security when they begin living in Canada. That is confirmed, by the way. The Queen put out a statement earlier today after meeting with her family, saying there will be a period of transition in which the Sussexes will spend time in Canada and the UK. I'm going to begin with our royal correspondent here, JP Tasker.
Self-described.
Yeah, self-described royal. Okay, so people are consuming this news a lot right now. Definitely the most read story on our website. They are a lot of interest in whether or not Canadians are going to be footing the bill.
Right. So the question is, as you saw Morneau kind of dance around there, whether we'll be on the hook for paying for security when they do move here to Canada part-time. Most estimates peg it as at least $1.7 million a year, and that's to replace or give them an equivalent of what they have right now in the United Kingdom, which is provided by the Metropolitan Police Service, Scotland Yard. They have a special branch that deals with that. We don't really have the same arrangement here in this country, obviously. When they do come to Canada in the past, royals, we have footed the bill for security. When the Queen came in 2010, for example, she did a 9-day tour of this country. It cost over $2 million just for that short stint. Same for when Kate and Will came a year later. It was roughly the same amount of money to provide them with the RCMP security detail. Now, the question is whether the UK will kick in any funds. Right now, they've already said, the royals, Harry and Meghan have said they will opt out of the sovereign fund, which is the taxpayer pool of money that they dip into every year to pay for their expenses, or most of their expenses. It's $140 million a year that all the royals have access to, and Prince Harry and Meghan have taken their cut. They don't want that anymore, so they're opting out, but they're still going to get funds called something from the Duchy of Cornwall, which is a private business.
What does this all mean?
It's a private business that the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, owns outright, and he makes a considerable amount of money from that company, which owns like 140,000 acres in England. So he pays his kids from that fund. There is a possibility they could use the money they get from that to cover the security costs they might incur here in Canada, but it's not sure how that's all going to shake out. It's probably going to take a bit of diplomacy between the UK and Canada to kind of settle on how they'll pay for that. But I spoke to the PMO today, the Privy Council office,
Nobody
the Heritage Department. Everyone's like, we're not commenting on this. Don't bother. Don't ask again until we come to you. You know?
It was interesting because I saw JP send out an email with all of their responses, Dan, and it's true. It wasn't even like we'll gloss over this. It was just we have no comment. We'll refer you somewhere else. We have no comment. We'll refer you somewhere else. Why would the government be hesitating to say one way or the other, even if they can't conclusively say whether they will pay, whether they're willing to pay?
Well, I think at this juncture, it's a little too early to be speculating on exactly whether or not Canadian taxpayers are going to have to.
Is it? They're already here.
Of course it is. I mean, it's far too early. We know today, only this afternoon, that they will move to Canada. Previous to that, it was North America.
Right.
I think it's, personally, as a monarchist, someone who supports the monarchy, I think them moving here would be a great thing. I think if a national referendum was held to decide whether or not some people as effortlessly cool as Prince Harry and Meghan should move to Canada, Canadians would probably support it in an overwhelming majority. Now, whether or not we cover their security costs, whether or not taxpayers are up for the bill of them moving here, I think that's a question that's really answered by whether or not they're going to serve as part-time royals here in Canada and undertaking official duties and as members of a royal family, even in a part-time perspective. That I would be completely fine with having to see Canadian taxpayers cover the costs of security in that instance. If they're completely private citizens with no official role, I think it's very difficult to make a case that they deserve any kind of public financing.
That's a good point. Matthew, it seemed to me like they were quitting royal life. Like that, I mean, and I know that there's technical terms and proper ways that JP knows to say it. I don't know them, but it seems like they're stepping away from that life. That's why they're coming to Canada. Is Dan correct that if they are going to be just acting as private citizens, taxpayers should stay out of it? But if they are going to perform royal functions, it's a different story.
I think that's a pretty fair comment. I find these issues really tough, even when I was a member of Parliament, because you would get questions in the House of Commons about the Prime Minister's security detail, both with Justin Trudeau and with Stephen Harper. I saw it happen to both of them. And I think there's a weird space when it comes to social license from the public about these types of costs. I think there's a surprising amount of acceptance for it, but there's also always that hesitation, which is why I think you ran into a little bit of a wall reaching out to the PMO, because I think ultimately there's a lot of unknowns too, right? I mean, I think the thing that jumped to my mind thinking about the costs wasn't just the manpower, but also the thought that came to my mind was Mar-a-Lago. When President Trump started making that the Southern White House or whatever the heck they're calling it, the costs of dealing with New York, of dealing with Florida for the Secret Service and building the infrastructure around that, what does that mean? If they're living in Ottawa, certainly I would imagine the costs are going to be lower than if they decide to go live in cottage country north of Toronto. So there's all these unknowns. I think it's a pretty difficult discussion. And quite frankly, as someone coming from Quebec, I'm sure the Bloc Québécois would more than be happy to ask questions about the cost for royal security when Parliament comes back. But it's a funny issue. And I think the Brits seem to be having the same debate, and I think the ball's going to be crossing the pond a couple of times before it's all said and done.
Good call. Melissa, what do you think?
I think it's very different when you're talking about paying for travel for elected officials who are elected by the people in their country. I don't think it's very reasonable for Canadians to expect or to be expected to foot the bill of royals who are not performing royal duties at the cost of a royal visit when they've chosen to live here. And when a 35-year-old man decides to become financially independent, that means he decides to be financially independent. It means move out of the
out of
house
mom's
and not have me pay for your new house or the security around your new house. I think that's a completely reasonable expectation for Prime Minister and I think, from Canadians. And I think that there's a lot of pollsters that are going to go out in the field and start to rejig those numbers about what people feel about the monarchy or republicanism in this country. And I think that reignites the debate.
To be fair, JP, they haven't said themselves that they're expecting those costs to be covered. In fact, most of at least what I've read about why they were leaving is to gain that independence. I mean, I know we're kind of joking about it, but they don't want to be funded off the public purse to the same degree. I'm not clear on to what degree they still might be, but it seems like that's the move that they're making at least.
Yeah, they said they want to give that up. They want to take a step back. They want to have more of a private life. They want to divorce themselves from the public eye, and that they understand that means giving up all the money that they get from the public in Britain. But security is a different pool of money. It's a different thing. It's a different, it requires government coordination. They can't just go out and hire some mall security guard to take care of them on Vancouver Island, right? It has to be part of the government apparatus. It has to be the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. It's in the title there to take care of them. So maybe they'll reimburse some of the funds that come from it, but they have been clear to this point. One of the few details we've actually learned from this whole thing from them themselves is that they do not want to take public dollars anymore. So it's going to be a delicate dance. We'll see how it goes. But
except maybe Canadian dollars. We'll see, right?
Yeah. But it will draw some attention to our country, I think. And it
already has.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. Absolutely. Anyway, I'm sure we'll be talking about this again, but I have to leave it there tonight. Thanks so much to our Power panel. Thanks to Melissa Landsman, Dan Moulton, Matthew Dubé, and John Paul Tasker. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.